What's going on, everyone? Moviegoers, movie lovers, Mr. Filmstock here, and welcome to another episode of the Mr. Filmstock podcast. Now, the dust has settled, everything has died down. San Diego Comic-Con 2024 has come and gone, and the big news in this episode, we will be talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how it has changed the trajectory of how superhero films are made. And the reason I say that San Diego Comic-Con 2024 is relevant, it's because Robert Downey Jr. is back in the MCU. Not as Tony Stark Iron Man, he's back as Victor Von Doom, Doctor Doom, in one of the craziest, weirdest, interesting castings of all time. Now, I'm not going to go deep into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I'm just going to hit on certain points, some facts, and what I think the future will hold, and how everything will change in a certain way. Now, the Marvel Cinematic Universe started in 2008 with Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. was cast in that role. Sort of his redemption arc, so to speak, in Hollywood because of all the trials and tribulations and the trouble he went through in his life during his time. And it started off the Infinity Saga, which ran from 2008 to 2019 and had 3 phases. Phase 1 of the Infinity Saga ran from 2008 to 2012. The films were Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, The First Avenger, and The Avengers. One of the most prolific cinematic experiences you have ever seen or witnessed. If you haven't, sit down, your little ones, have them watch it. They will fall in love with it. As someone who grew up with comic books for the longest I can remember, Batman was the big film adaptation that I remember seeing. But for me, it wasn't Christopher Reeve's Superman. It was Batman 1989, Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, directed by Tim Burton, which was an exceptional film. And it's always been DC, and I really wasn't into the whole Marvel aspect of things until, I want to say, X-Men came out with Hugh Jackman, Halle Berry, Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart. And then you move into the Spider-Man movies with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and the whole conjunction of how Marvel Entertainment wanted to begin planning to produce films in its own independently by certain means, but distribute them through other studios for that matter. Now, they did sign off on certain things, like you had the Hulk movie, you had the Fantastic Four movie, that weren't part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But with what Phase 1 did and how it continued is absolutely insane and mind-blowing. Now, Phase 2 of Marvel kind of had the films of Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Ant-Man. And then Phase 3, which lasted from 2016 to 2019, probably the longest in the kind of saga, and the most films in that phase. Captain America Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man Far From Home. Feeling an aspect of how Spider-Man Far From Home was the last film after Avengers Endgame was really big. And the reason I say it was really big, it's because the impact Marvel had with Avengers Endgame was one of the craziest you could ever imagine. It's a 3-hour movie. It doesn't feel like a 3-hour movie at all. But what it brings to the forefront was something different. The emotion, the drama. Having all your favorite comic book characters in one film is hard to do. Yes, CGI, okay, is good or bad, wonky here and there. That's besides the point. The interesting thing is the storyline, the structure. You didn't think to see big name stars next to actors who starred in films where they were co-stars for other actors. You didn't see that often. Now you have Robert Downey Jr. going face-to-face with Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd going face-to-face with Chris Hemsworth. And then everyone else is fighting Thanos. Probably the second biggest bad guy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I'll get to that later, why he's the second biggest bad guy. And then after the Infinity Saga, you had the TV shows here and there in there. You had you had yeah, I'm not going to touch on the shows because the shows are a hit and miss. They're kind of good and bad. You had, I don't know. I don't want to. I really don't want to touch on the shows because it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yes, I understand that, but this is the film saga of what I am speaking of. So after the Infinity Saga, you had the Multiverse Saga, which started in 2021 with Phase 4. Of course, you had the pandemic. It pushed back a couple of things and changed a lot of things. But with Phase 4, you had Black Widow, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, The Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Thor, Love and Thunder, and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. These films, some of them, phenomenal. Others, not so good at all. And I feel like Marvel at this point did not know where they were going or where they were going to go with it. And they just, held back because then you had shows like Moon Knight, She-Hulk, WandaVision, which was a phenomenal show. And you have the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, another phenomenal show. Then you had Secret Invasion. It's like, wait a minute, what is going on? What is happening? You had the aspect of these great shows and films, but it just didn't hit the mark of what they wanted, and people started to realize that. Sometimes you had 3 movies releasing in 1 year, 3 shows also releasing in 1 year. It's like, give us a break. And they kind of did that. Now, we're going into Phase 5. As I'm speaking on this episode about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the sagas and the phases, we are now on Phase 5, which started in 2023 and is going to end in 2025. Now, the films that are slated for, or have come out and are slated for release: Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Marvels, Deadpool and Wolverine, Captain America: Brave New World, and Thunderbolts. The biggest thing about this phase is that Kang, Jonathan Majors' character, was the supposed big villain in this. They had Avengers Secret Wars and Avengers Kang Dynasty happening and coming out. After what Jonathan Majors went through in real life, I will just leave it at that. I'm not going to get into it. It's the man's personal life. We all know what he did. And it's like, okay, Kang is the big villain. But then after Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and how Loki introduced him, it's like, wait a minute. What can we do and what will we do? And after that, it's like, oh, okay, shit. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And then slowly you see like them shifting gears and changing. The worst film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the Multiverse Saga, I will say, is The Marvels. Yes, granted, you had Miss Marvel in it and the other aspects of what it could be for the characters, but then it's like, what could you do? And then things changed. Things shifted. July 26, 2024, Deadpool and Wolverine released in theaters. That same weekend it came out, San Diego Comic-Con 2024 happened. Yeah, it's insane. It was a big weekend for the final weekend of July for Marvel. And they hit it out of the ballpark. Deadpool and Wolverine grossed $500+ million worldwide at the box office, becoming the biggest R-rated opening for a film ever, especially for the character of Deadpool and Wolverine. It grossed $211 million domestically in one weekend, the 6th biggest opening in the domestic box office, and people loved it. Yeah, the story is here nor there, but it's what you see in it, what it is, and how it's the trajectory of what's going to happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, not only that, you have the announcement that happened at San Diego Comic-Con. Robert Downey Jr. is back as Victor Von Doom. Now, how is he back? Is it a different variant? Because we know about the variants. We know about the anchor beings now. We know about the incursion that's going to happen. We know about certain things that could bring everything together in the multiverse. The word mutants have been uttered and mentioned, even in the Marvels, as early as the Marvels, which was a very, very interesting twist in how things were done. I do want to say, though, that I'm very, very surprised at what's going to happen. Because after Doctor Doom was announced and Robert Downey Jr. is coming in, they changed Avengers Kang Dynasty to Avengers Doomsday. Yeah, you read that correctly, and you heard that correctly. Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Now, everybody's like, "Oh, how can it happen? Tony Stark, or it can't play the same character." No, Iron Man. Tony Stark was a different version of Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom was Iron Man. Iron Man. There is a iteration and variation of that in the comic books. I did not know that for a while, and I read about that years ago after I read Secret Wars, and I was like, what is going on, what's happening, and I wanted to get a fresh take on it. And this is why I think Victor Von Doom, Dr. Doom, is the number one biggest, most prolific villain in Marvel Universe history, bar none. For me, it goes Dr. Doom, Thanos, and then Norman Osborn. And it's just how it brings everything together, and it's like, what is going to happen? Because the Fantastic Four is happening, and that film is actually part of Phase 6, because after Deadpool and Wolverine, which came out July 26, 2024, you still have two films left in the Phase 5 of the Multiverse Saga, which is Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts. Now, the fun thing about Thunderbolts is that everyone's going to be fighting different things. It's the villains teaming up and doing certain things, which is great. But with Captain America Brave New World, you see how things are shifting, how things are changing. Harrison Ford is now playing Thunderbolt Ross after William Hurt passed away in real life. But Red Hulk is coming into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Could we get Red Hulk versus Green Hulk? Hulk versus Hulk? That will be interesting and fun to see. And like I said with Doctor Doom, this character will be in probably post-credit scenes, and especially post-credit scene for the Fantastic Four First Steps, which comes out July 2025. And then you have Blade coming out in November of 2025. And then Avengers Doomsday is May of 2026. And Avengers Secret Wars is May of 2027. So Secret Wars evidently closes the multiverse saga. But then it begs the question, what's next after the multiverse saga? That's the question that needs to be answered. Because right now, it's like, okay, Tony Stark. I keep saying Tony Stark because Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark in real life. He just embodies that character, the egotisticalness of it. He just is that character in real life and on screen. But you have Battleworld. Who will be the focus of certain things? We know, and it's rumored that Tom Holland is the leader of the Avengers, the new Avengers, or the young Avengers. And they fight against, Doctor Doom. They get the Fantastic Four involved. They have to stop Doctor Doom from taking over the world. But then, in Secret Wars, will that take place on Battleworld? How will Doctor Strange play a part in it? What's going to happen? Is this a different Tony Stark from another dimension, a multiverse, a different Earth, a variant? Or is it like so-called certain things happening? I hope they don't go the route that they went with Ben Kingsley in Iron Man 3, where you thought he was the Mandarin and he wasn't. It was just some actor hired to play the Mandarin and it became a comedic shtick. I don't want that. I don't want that at all. I want this to be the real Doctor Doom. Maybe it's not. Maybe there is another version of Doctor Doom somewhere else on Earth, whatever number it could be, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Or is it Doctor Doom, Victor Von Doom? Or did Tony Stark really die on Earth and a different Doctor Doom somewhere else managed to, I want to say, do the nanotechnology or whatever that he wanted to do in Age of Ultron? He perfected it. Because the face mask, the mask that Doctor Doom wears is going to be the likeness of the Iron Man mask. There's no doubt about that. And you know that Robert Downey Jr. is going to take the mask off in the film because he's not going to just wear the mask. You have a big name like this, he's going to take the mask off. The other thing about the Marvel Cinematic Universe was that the only way Robert Downey Jr. would come back is if the Russo brothers, Anthony and Joe Russo, returned to direct the two Avengers movies. And they did, and that's how you got Robert Downey Jr. The question is that in total, Robert Downey Jr. has made $500 to $600 million off of Marvel itself by having the Iron Man movies showing up in the cameos and just doing every single thing that he can possibly do for Marvel. Now, it's estimated that Robert Downey Jr. is getting paid 80 plus million or even more to appear in post-credit scenes and star as the villain Doctor Doom in the Avengers movies. And I'm pretty sure much of the budget for the Avengers movies and the post-credit scenes for certain, maybe the Fantastic Four, will feature, much of that budget will go to Robert Downey Jr. I don't hate it. It's great. It's fine. And it's really, 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 really good. Now, the great thing is that Marvel is the first studio, so to speak, to pass $30 billion at the box office, which is a great, great feat, and it's fantastic to see. So where do you go now after the multiverse saga? Well, you go toward the mutant saga, the X-Men. You go toward everything you can do with those characters. We do have Wolverine back in the MCU, but he's in a different timeline. Deadpool is a mutant. He's considered one of, the X-Men as well. And it's just like, okay, what can you do? You had Patrick Stewart in the Multiverse of Madness in a different universe. You had all these things. You had Mr. Fantastic, John Krasinski, as a different universe. You had all these things happening, and it's like, what is going to happen now with the MCU after the multiverse saga? Because at some point Kevin Feige was like, people are not liking what we're doing right now. We need to stop. We need to slow down. We need to reevaluate. Okay, let's do this. And I feel like he wants to just close out the multiverse saga and start again with the mutant saga, which will probably be a reboot, but you never know. So you just have to wait and see if that's the case and if that's going to happen. If that doesn't happen, then great. I mean, so far 6 phases. How many phases are we going to? It was rumored that Kevin Feige had the idea of having films all the way up to 2032, even 2035. So it's like, whoa, what are you going to do? It's like, can you actually do that? And with that, you not only have the films, but then you have the TV shows. Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Daredevil, The Punisher. All those street level characters, which they are street level characters, and they are gritty and in your face. You'll see them in the films. You'll see Punisher in one of the Avengers movies. You'll see Daredevil. You'll see She-Hulk. You'll see all these characters in the MCU films, and it's really good, and they know what they're doing. But then it's like, okay, you have the Infinity Saga, phases 1, 2, 3, the Multiverse Saga, phases 4, 5, 6, the Mutant Saga, phases 7, 8, 9, and then what's after the Mutant Saga? I don't know. Like, what other big villain is there in Marvel? We still have to have the MCU version of Norman Osborn. Yes, we know Willem Dafoe came back to play that character, but that Norman Osborn is Tobey Maguire's Norman Osborn. Andrew Garfield had a Norman Osborn, but we didn't really get to see that. And it's just interesting how everything's coming together, and people are very excited about it. But people weren't excited about the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. People saying Cillian Murphy or, Matthew McConaughey or other characters here. Marvel has an idea, and I trust Marvel with this process because it's going to be interesting, it's going to be fun, and I haven't been excited for a villain or a character returning in a comic book movie in a very long time. Yes, you have different actors in comic book movies playing different roles in different films. Josh Brolin did it with Deadpool 2, where he played Cable, and then he played Thanos in the Avengers movies and in the Infinity Saga. So nobody really paid attention to that because it was the 2 different characters. But people are batting an eye toward Robert Downey Jr. being cast as Doctor Doom. Sit and wait. This same backlash is the same feeling when Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker back in 2006, 2007 for The Dark Knight. People are like, it's not good, it's not perfect. Okay, let's wait and see what happens. And we know what happened with that movie. It became the biggest box office movie of all time, garnered many awards posthumously for Heath Ledger, and one of the best craziest, interesting, darkest villain characters you could ever imagine in the history of movies, and probably the best portrayal of a bad guy. The Dark Knight is not a comic book movie. It's just a heist, gritty movie with Batman and Joker in it. That's all it is. And Christopher Nolan knew what he was doing. Could you imagine Christopher Nolan coming in and directing a Marvel movie? Wow. Minds will be blown. Heads will roll. It will be insane. Deadpool and Wolverine kind of saved the Marvel Cinematic Universe in a way, because you had the TVA in it. We know what happened at the end of Loki season 2 and Loki, or God Loki now, because then in the comic books, Doctor Doom kind of absorbs Loki's energy. Doctor Doom does kill Thanos in a different alternate universe, does create Ultron in a foreseeable aspect, but then we have Vision also, or the White Vision, coming in as well. So who knows, we might hear the ship of Theseus again. You never know. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. Just the way the aspect is of how the cameo appearances happened in Deadpool and Wolverine. Everyone came back. What's going to happen? Every single thing that Marvel did in the 90s and early 2000s is coming back now as cameos. Jennifer Garner as Elektra in Deadpool and Wolverine. Fantastic. Like, you knew what was coming because that was the one thing that was given. But then it's like, okay, you have Ghost Rider. What can we do with that? You have Mahershala Ali as Blade. Hopefully they get that right. I mean, I don't know. That's a hit or miss with me on that. That has to be rated R, but you never know what can happen and what can transpire. But this is the multiverse saga, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It also includes multiple series. I mean, you have Armor Wars, you have the Spider-Man sequel, you have other sequels and certain things that are happening, where you also have the X-Men films that are coming out. Who's going to play Magneto? Who's going to play Professor X? Who's going to play the new Wolverine? Storm, Jean Grey, Cyclops. So many questions that need to be answered in the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward. I had to touch base on this topic because I thought, let it settle, let it die down a little bit, and let's pick it back up and see what happens and what people think about Robert Downey Jr. coming back in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because if you think about it, if Tom Holland's Spider-Man is fighting Doctor Doom and the mask comes off and he just stops and stares and he thinks that's Tony Stark, but he doesn't know that that's not really Tony Stark, like, the emotional trauma Tom Holland's Spider-Man, Peter Parker, will go through will be insanely crazy to watch, and people will shed a tear for that. Not only are we getting that, we could be getting that. Miles Morales is evidently making his live action debut in one of the Spider-Man films. So let's see what happens, because in the past, Marvel didn't really do good things with Paramount, Universal, and Sony. I mean, we know what they're doing with Sony, and we know what they're doing with the Venom films. How does that correspond? Will Venom come in and help with Tom Hardy? Like I said, so many questions need to be answered, and Kevin Feige knows what he's doing. This franchise, this universe is the biggest ever. DC tried to capitalize on that with the Justice League, but it just didn't work. So we have to wait and see to find out, like I keep saying, to see what's going to happen next. All right, everyone, that does it for this week's episode of the Mr. Filmstock podcast. Not a long episode. I figured let me just touch base with the Marvel Cinematic Universe to see, what and get your insights are. Leave a comment. Let me know if you're watching this. Leave a comment in the description box below. If you are listening to this, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this, be sure you hit subscribe. Like that notification bell to be notified for new weekly podcast release episodes. The feedback has been spectacular and magnificent for my podcast, and it's only going to get better from here. I have a lot of great topics to talk about. I even have emails of topics that I should talk about, which I will definitely get to in future episodes. This has been a blast for me, and I really, really enjoy it a lot, and I can't wait to share with you more thoughts on the film industry, movie news, screenwriters, directors, films, sagas, Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just a one step to bigger franchises that I will be talking about. So I want to thank you all for tuning in, listening in, watching if you are watching this as a video podcast, listening in if you're listening to it as an audio podcast. I really, really do appreciate it. I'm Mr. Filmstock, and thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of the Mr. Filmstock Podcast.